Good morning and happy Memorial Day weekend, everyone. It is, we're in the midst of our beautiful Garden Jubilee here in Hendersonville, and it's a beautiful day. It seems like winter may be behind us. We can keep our fingers crossed anyway. Let's hope so.
It usually doesn't snow in Memorial Day.
Well, that's right. Thanks for the reminder. I feel better already. So it's that would be a great thing, and I think we're safe to say that maybe we won't see any snow this week. Well, it is May 25th, and I can't neglect sending my brother a happy birthday. He's, I don't know how old he is today. He's older than I am, I know that. Probably worth not saying, but happy birthday, Kip, if you're watching. Anyway, I just got back last night. I had a wonderful experience. I went to Atlanta. My sister Molly, who some of you may or may not know, has 3 daughters, and one of which graduated on Friday night from high school. And, you know, I was thinking back about my high school graduation and this one, and little different, to say the least. First of all, the pomp and circumstance, and they had a little symphony there playing, and it was, you know, really good music beforehand, and it was great. And the kids, you know, these kids don't look like they're 18 these days. I don't know what it is, but they're all glamorous and beautiful, the boys and girls both, and really moving forward. I mean, to hear some of the accomplishments that these children have made and then where they're heading in their lives gives me great hope for the future, because they're really awesome kids. But I do have to share something funny. You know, my sister lives in a suburb of Atlanta, Johns Creek, and she graduated from Johns Creek, my niece did, Johns Creek High School, which is only 5 years old. And, you know, to think about that, I was like, wow, how do you start a high school like this? I mean, that is tremendous. And it was a graduating class of 445 students, so it's a big group. And I was looking at the program going, we're going to be here all night. But they did it quickly. We got through it. But as we pulled into they had it at a church, a community church there. We pulled into the parking lot, which was massive. I was like, this is a church. It was a huge building. It looked like Atlanta Airport. They had parking, at least 2,000 parking spots, maybe more. I mean, it was huge. And apparently this pastor is, you know, televised, the multimedia screens that they had and the camera equipment, not like ours, not as good as ours, but almost. And they had the one room where each family got 4 tickets. And so the family and the graduates got to sit in one auditorium, and then the rest of us got to sit in the other auditorium. So the other auditorium was enormous. It must have seated 2,000 people itself in the small one. So it was just a crazy experience. And then you walk down the hallway, and there's no churchy feel at all, which is, you know, fine. But yeah, there's a children's section there, and my sister said that looks like the Rainforest Cafe. They had this huge entrance in there and all this, you know, inviting stuff. And I said to my niece, boy, this really doesn't feel like a church. And she coined it. She said, well, it feels like an airport, doesn't it? And I said, yeah, it was pretty crazy. And the amazing thing is they're still adding on to this place. And I don't know, they're obviously filling it, so that's good for them, and I honor their prosperity. But on the other hand, for me, I've said this to a number of people, it's more meaningful for me to know and have a relationship with everyone who comes here. I'd rather have 100 people that I really know and that we can support each other than being just someone who sneaks in and sneaks out. Not to say that that's not a wonderful thing, and that's obviously what a lot of people are seeking, but for me, this feels much better because it's intimate, and I can look around here and I know everyone at a deep level and get to know others even better as time goes on. So that is meaningful for me. So I'm glad to be back. I guess I would, before I go into my talk here, one other little thing. My nephew graduated. I was actually going to pull an all-nighter. I was going to drive from Atlanta on Friday night and drive to West Virginia to see him graduate yesterday. But my sisters said, no, you can't do that. You really, they wouldn't let me do it. But, and I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have been here today. But he graduated from Huntington High School in West Virginia, and of course, it was a completely different story in West Virginia. You know, you got Johns Creek, Georgia, and then the West Virginia one was just different, we'll just say that. And but he was valedictorian, and he's an awesome kid, so I'm very blessed to have such great nieces and nephews, and so it's great. But it's the one thing I have to say is that the hope and the promise, as I mentioned earlier, I really feel if these are the kids leading us into the future, they're really good kids. And because I can remember what we did after our high school graduation, and you know, we jumped in the car and drove to Myrtle Beach. That's what we did, and it was Partyville. These kids, they just they're not as wild. So that's good. That's a good thing. So anyway, last week, Ellen and I saw a movie which was fantastic. Has anyone seen Heaven is for Real?
No, but I'm going to see it.
Read the book.
Read the book. It's a great movie. I had mixed feelings about going to see it. I was like, well, yeah, that could be one that I'd like to see, but on the other hand, maybe not. It wasn't one that I was being pulled one way or another, really. But of course, the convenience, and I love to go to the Flat Rock Cinema right down the street here. They have a great little theater. If you've never been there, it's fantastic. And so we went in to see this, and I'm so happy that I did. And the story is this, because, you know, over the years, the great mystery of what happens when we die is still a mystery. Even after this movie, it's even more of a mystery, and I think that was part of what the movie pointed out. But it's a story of this pastor who was played by Greg Kinnear, and I remember him from Little Miss Sunshine. He was the little girl's father. And of course, you know, the role he played in that movie compared to this role were two completely different roles. And then of course the church president, I guess he was the president, was the fellow from Sideways, the one who was getting married, the nutty one. And of course he plays a really serious role here. So it was neat to see him play different roles, but it was in Nebraska. Has anyone been to Nebraska, by the way? Really? Yeah, it just looks, whoa. That's, yeah, I can't say I'm needing to go there, but it was in Nebraska. And he was a pastor of this church. He was really, you know, one of those young evangelical, very dynamic preachers who was able to really connect with the congregation. Again, it wasn't a big church, but it was a great community that was established there, and he was a big part of it. And they had two little kids, a little boy and a little girl. And this little boy, he was 4 years old, and his acting ability was amazing. He was the cutest little thing you ever saw. And he was engaging. I mean, it's worth just seeing a 4-year-old do what this kid did just to see the movie. But the story goes on. His name was Colton. And he, you know, he was really inquisitive. He was very tuned in. You sort of got that before the incident even happened. This kid was, you know, really, I don't like to use this word, but he was special in that regard. And so anyway, he had some issues to where he was vomiting and carried a high fever for a few days, to the point where his parents knew that they had to take him to the emergency room because it was not passing. So they go to the emergency room and did a scan, and sure enough, his appendix had burst. And they took him immediately into surgery, and they didn't know if he would survive. And so the mother is crying and calling out to the congregation for prayers. And of course, the pastor, Greg Kinnear, his name was Todd Burpo, what a name. So Todd was in the chapel at the hospital, and he's, of course, you know, angry as could be at God. You know, how can you let my son die? And so the good news is he made it through surgery. The little boy made it through, and he was fine. And but he came out, and he knew things. He said, I saw you and Mom. I saw Mom crying and calling members of the church, and I saw you yelling at God. And so, of course, you know, that was, of course, gave him room to stand back. And then he also said he met his sister, And the mother said, well, what do you mean you met your sister? Your sister's right here. He said, no, the one that died in your tummy, I met her. And she was obviously, what the heck's going on? And of course, the cool thing is he also met his grandfather, but not, and when his father showed him the picture, he had shown him a picture of when the grandfather was probably in his 70s, and he said, no, that's not him. But he said, so he went and dug up a picture from when his grandfather was in his 30s, and he said, that's him, that's him. So he said, nobody's old in heaven. So it was really cool, because the angels were singing, and there was, everything that you would probably hear that in a church that heaven is about. It was his experience. I mean, he met Jesus, when he got there, and all kinds of great things. But the interesting thing is the hospital said he never did really die. So I guess he was on that cusp of life and death, and just took that journey over for a brief time. Well, interestingly enough, back in year 2000, I was sick as could be. I remember Ellen was in London with her family, and all of a sudden, same symptoms. I mean, I was really sick. But I called a friend of mine who was a nurse, and I said, Jackie, I'm really feeling lousy. She said, oh, there's a terrible bug going around. She said, you'll be fine, just rest. And meanwhile, it just never got better. Next morning, I get up. My dog is standing by my bed waiting for me to take her out and feed her, and I couldn't get out of bed. So I called a fella who worked for me, and he came over to the house and came up to the bedroom, and he just looked at me and called 911. Well, I had the same thing happen. I had my appendix burst, and the doctor even looked at me, and he just shook his head. He said, you're really, really sick. And all I remember is when they took me into surgery, the nurses and the doctors all held hands and said a prayer. I'll never forget that. And that was really, it wasn't a church hospital either. It was just Palm Beach Gardens Hospital. And when I got out, I wasn't out of the woods yet. I was still pretty sick, but I had a really strange experience. And Ellen will attest to this, because people are calling her in England, and she's of course concerned. And I get on the phone. I said, hey, how you doing? I'm doing great. And she said, really? I heard you were really sick. I said, no, I'm doing great, really. And as a matter of fact, when I get out of here, I'm going to fly up to New York on Saturday to my friend Jane's wedding. And so Ellen's like, oh, she's fine. She said she's not as bad as we thought. But the interesting thing I found out later is that before, a lot of times when you're at that cusp of transition, that you get euphoric, and that was the state I was in. And then the doctor comes into my room, and he goes on to say, we're not having any luck with these antibiotics getting this infection out of your system. I mean, he was genuinely concerned. So he gave me another infusion of something. I ended up being in the hospital for 2 weeks, I remember that. But when I got out of, after he did that, I remember going into, I just said to myself, well, this is it. This is it. It was the end. I just knew it. And it wasn't like I was freaking out, I was panicking, it just was the end. And I didn't have the angels, I didn't go through the white light, I didn't meet Jesus, but I just went into this total cocoon of peace and surrender and love. And I'm not even sure, I'm not sure how long I was there. But when I woke up, the infection had broken to a large degree. So I know something happened there, but I can't hardly describe it. It was not an experience of this world, but it was certainly different from this young man's. And different, everybody, when you read these near-death accounts, everybody has their own experience. And some are similar and some aren't. Well, one thing that I found interesting was the father, the pastor, Todd, had done a lot of research on near-death experiences because he was trying to make sense of it himself. And he found this little girl, I forget where she was, but she had died, and a very similar, almost identical thing had happened to her. And he had seen this on CNN, her story. Well, what happened is she came back and she was painting pictures of her experience there, and these pictures were beautiful. So one night, the father is going through all of his pictures of Jesus. Is this who you saw? And the boy's like, no, that's not Jesus. Is this? No, that's not Jesus. That's not him. And then he shows him on the computer this painting that this young girl had made. She was on the other side of the world. And he goes, that's him. That's Jesus. So it was the same, and he had light eyes. You know, so it was, he said, no, Jesus, he kept saying, Jesus has light eyes. So what is that? You know, you see that connection, and they had the same experience. But you hear other people who don't have at all any of the same experiences. So when, you know, you can do a little poking around and you can read books and you see that people have lots of different experiences. Some people experience hell. I mean, some people come back and say, oh my God, I went to hell and I don't want to go back there. So they do everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen next time. And understandably so. So, it was, the fire and the brimstone that they had heard about. And then there's people who, like myself, had just this euphoric, peaceful experience. And then there's others who just have whatever experience they do, but there's lots out there. And the psychologist that he went to see, and I think that this is something along the lines that makes sense as well, is that, and this for me seems to be what would make the most sense, and that is that our consciousness never dies, and it's continual. So basically, we're just going to carry on our consciousness into the next experience. So whatever my beliefs are, there's a good chance that that's what my experience will be. But again, there's things that don't make sense of that either. Because you hear of people who have no beliefs, and then they go over and meet Jesus, and they come back and their whole life is transformed and they make a shift. So, these questions, this mystery, I don't think we'll ever find the answer until we're really there. But it certainly is something to think about, because the one thing about us is none of us get out of this experience alive, as they say, right? So, but the good news is, and I choose to believe, and I know that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's a beautiful. It's kind of like we're free of all the heaviness of the body, and that our spirit can soar. That's what resonates in my heart, and there's no fear at all. And I didn't have fear even before that experience, personal experience I had. But it is something to think about and consider. Well, of course, we hear about this story of heaven, and my brother believes this, and good for him. That it's, the pearly gates and the streets paved in gold, and everyone's in white robes, and, who knows, choirs and angels. That sounds pretty good to me. I mean, it's cool. And I'm open to that. And, but I have to sort of tell a little joke here related to this, because I thought it was so cute and a bit relevant to this. And there was this husband and wife, and they were from Boca. And Boca Raton, Florida, if you don't know where I'm talking about. And it's pretty flashy down there, and but it's also, there's people, in all areas that are very tight with their money, and they want to make sure that they're getting the best value for everything. And so all of a sudden, this couple is in a car accident, and they die at the same time. So they both go to the gates, and they meet St. Peter together. And so St. Peter said, welcome to heaven. It's so nice to have you here. And I don't know, Bob and Alice were their names. And so and St. Peter says, well, folks, go over here and we'll get you all set up in some beautiful clothes. And of course, the robes were made out of the finest silks and just tailored beautifully, and everyone looked great in it. And he said, now go over here and go to the wardrobe department and we'll get you all set up. So Bob's like, well, now how much, those clothes are pretty nice, how much are they? And he said, oh no, they're free. Nothing in heaven costs anything. He said, really? So they go over and get their beautiful clothes, and they're just delighted. And then St. Peter comes up to him and says, you know, Bob, I heard you like to play golf. We have great golf courses here, and better than anything on planet Earth. I mean, really good golf courses. Really? Well, how much is it? He said, no, it's free. It's free. Don't worry, everything here is free. And he's like, wow, this is great. I'm beginning to like this place. So he got a little hungry after golf, and St. Peter says, well, we have lots of great restaurants here, so you can go wherever you want. The food is the best of quality, and you can go enjoy as much as you want, and you won't gain a pound, and all of this. And he said, and of course Bob's question, well, how much is that food? That food's expensive. He said, no, I'm telling you, get it out in your mind that there's no fee for anything in heaven. And he says, okay. So he's sitting there and he's eating, you know, everything that he denied himself while he was here, and just loving it, and better yet, not gaining a pound. Then he got quiet for a minute and he looked at his wife and he said, darn you. And she says, what? He said, if you hadn't made me eat that wheat bran for the past 10 years, I could have died 10 years ago. So you know, that's the way I choose it. Now that would be heaven to me. It's being able to eat whatever you want and not gain weight, right? That's heaven. But anyway, A Course in Miracles says that heaven is a decision that I must make. I will make it now and will not change my mind because it is the only thing I want. And you know, the Course in Miracles doesn't necessarily talk about heaven being a destination, but rather a state of mind. And that when I allow my heart to open up to love, and spirit, and be led by that, heaven is here now. The Course says there is no other place. It's right here, right now. So I believe that if we really take that into consideration and practice that, and make heaven our destination here in this moment and every moment, then as we continue into the next experience, and we leave our meat bags, that's our body, as Gary Renard puts it. We let leave these meat bags behind, and we go on and continue this experience. And but I also think that the Course also says that hell is a state of mind too, and hell is being in fear, feeling like we're being attacked, feeling in lack, feeling the belief and attachment to our body. You know, all of these things that we're not. It's really attachment to the illusion, and then not only being attached to it, but allowing this illusion to dictate my state of being, my state of mind. So if I can allow myself to be in that state of consciousness of heaven in every moment, which is really a decision, as it says, heaven is the decision I must make. I make it now, and I will not change my mind, because it is the only thing I really want. And you know, we get on this cycle. You know, we talk about it. I think we all can relate to it, of thinking that there's actually something that we have to do, something we have to be, something we have to accomplish. We're human doings all the time, you know, and we're looking out here, but it's not out there. So it's really, again, just being willing to take that breath and bringing that into our conscious awareness in every moment. And then, as I said, the continuation is what we'll experience. So if you want to go to heaven, the best I can find from this, and there's, I'm sure, so much unknown that I can't even begin to imagine. Because A Course in Miracles, there again, always goes back to the teaching that this world is a projection of my consciousness. So if I'm seeing heaven, then that's a reflection of my loving consciousness. If I'm seeing hell and conflict, that's a reflection as well. But again, not to be judging ourselves, attacking ourselves or others, but rather recognizing it, taking that breath, and making another decision for heaven. And so, you know, we're here with this weekend being a weekend of memories, memorials for those who we've lost, not only in battle, but also just loved ones, and of course pets. You know, I think some of us at least can relate to how we have such a connection with our pets. And I want to believe that, I believe and know that they're still here with us. As a matter of fact, we have 2 dachshunds. We had one a few years ago that passed away. It was a weird thing on vacation. And Ellen said, you can come back, but come back in a healthier body next time. Mm-hmm. And she came back in a very healthy body this time. And it's the same personality, you can't even believe it. It's the weirdest thing that the way she interacts with Ellen and the way she interacts with me is exactly the same. So, it's just, anything is possible. We just have to be open to it. So our little Tootsie is now, is Lily, is providing a body for Lily's consciousness. And it's so cool. And I do believe in all of these good things. But again, heaven is an attitude, it's a decision, and it's up to us to make those conscious decisions in every moment. I just choose something, got my attention a while back recently, not too far back. I'm not going to go into drama and conflict anymore. It's, I used to see myself as a fixer, and I had to fix everybody and convince everybody, and that was hell for me. Okay, but it takes what it takes. Sometimes we got to go down that slippery slope and go through our own suffering before we realize, you know what? As Helen Schuckman said when she began to channel A Course in Miracles, there has to be a better way, and I'm determined to find it. And so if we just be open, be led, place our future in the hands of Spirit, then heaven is here now. There is no other place, and all is well. So do we really know? I don't think I can, in any certainty, say that I know anything. I really don't. I just share my experience. I read, I try to find the commonality, but then you have this one thing out in right field that just doesn't make sense, but it's real to that experience and that person, so you have to give that merit as well. But I do know, and this is from my experience and from what I've witnessed in others, when I choose to live in my heart, I am experiencing heaven, and that is good. And I do believe that will continue with me as long as I go, and it will continue with each and every one of us. So in closing, I invite you guys to be open to the mystery, live in your hearts, and live fully for today. And so it is. Namaste.